Well, it's 6 p.m. This is the Randomizer, and it is Friday, January 28th, 2022. And we have a fascinating discussion tonight. Let me bring up my term for the day, randomly selected by the machine, Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things is something that a lot of people are not familiar with, but we're going to get into a little of the details here very shortly. First of all, I want to encourage people to join our Monday classes, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are starting lesson 1 of the lessons Meta World, and we're going to discover the progression of humanity from fire and sticks and rocks all the way up to nanotechnology. We're going to look at the psychology behind it, the pragmatics of it, and we're going to cover some interesting things such as the limits of growth that we've encountered and how we're going to get around that, and what the eventual goal of humanity might be. So that's going to be a fascinating course. Starts Monday the 31st and will extend for a total of 6 classes. So go ahead, go to the Schultz Laboratories or Universe Science Center website and sign up for that course. And if you're at it, you might as well sign up for a membership to the Universe Science Center and become a member and help us expand our galleries and content. And get in there with an Oculus or with your machine, your computer, and walk around the galleries and explore some of the stuff we've got. So let's get right down to Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things is not so different from the regular Internet that we're familiar with. As you know, the Internet provides worldwide connection for many devices that communicate. And most of the time, people will use one specific portion of the Internet, and that is specifically the HTML, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol type. So when you go to a website, you're using the HTTP or HTTPS, which is a secured version. But many people of greater age will remember when the internet had other things on it as well, and it still does. There were chat rooms and news groups. There were other facilities you could get at, like FTP protocol, file transfer protocol, and those things still exist. But most people generally are not aware of them. Think of them as the plumbing, the electrical, the communication, the underside of what's behind the internet actually being able to function. And when you get into a web browser or download a podcast, you're only using one of those specific functions. Well, the Internet of Things was a move to take devices that could be automated or remotely operated and monitored and put them online. And so instead of a bunch of people with laptops, you'll discover that there are devices out there. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the home lighting systems you can buy now, and you can control the color and the illumination. You can turn them on or off. You can run them from work. You can run them from a cell phone app. You can actually put an application on your cell phone that allows you to monitor and operate the lighting in your home. But there are other things as well. Many of the new appliances are network connected, or IoT. And IoT is just an acronym for Internet of Things. And what it allows you to do is to monitor the operation of your refrigerator. The contents of it can be read immediately if you have some inventory control, and many people do on their refrigerators these days. They can go to the store, they can call the refrigerator and find out what they need to buy. And it sounds wonderful having an automated home. But as with every technology you invent, there's always a downside. I mean, yeah, we invented fire, and then people use it to attack other people or burn things down. We invented the wheel, which is great for transportation, then people use it to run stuff over or cause mayhem. And the internet is no different. The Internet of Things generally consists of all of these automated home devices. And smart power meters for your home happen to be one of those devices. And how pervasive is it? It's estimated right now that there are approximately 50 billion IoT devices out there on the web. So what's it all about? Now, it's great that I can look in on my Chime doorbell or whatever they have, Ring doorbells, You have, well, let me list. You have lighting systems, vending machines. Many companies have their vending machines on the Internet of Things so they can monitor them and know when to restock them, or if something's broken. You have appliances, as I mentioned, stoves, refrigerators. You can start a roast baking while you're still on your way home from work and check it on the way. Um, well, there's security cameras of all sorts, motion sensors, light sensors, and routers, believe it or not. Many routers that people use in their homes, and in particular, we're going to get down to one of the Chinese routers, the Huawei router, which we got some interesting stories about that. But all of these things are connected to your network. And many people would think, how would a hacker get into this? And hackers certainly do that. And hackers often would take over the router that somebody has in their house if it were not password protected. And some people can do it from a phone or from a computer or getting online and doing it web wise. And they would take over the router and monitor somebody's use or hijack it and use it for their own purposes. And, in the wee hours of the morning, nobody recognizes that you're using their router to download 50 megabytes of porno movies or whatever you're doing with it, or to steal credit card numbers or whatever. And many people have heard of the dark web, which is another face of the internet, and we won't even get into that right now, but we're going to kind of skirt the edge of it a little here. So what happens when somebody decides to, as a prank, turn all the lights on or off in your house? They hack into your IoT, your Internet of Things, and they send a different command. Or what happens if a hacker literally programs one of your Internet of Things devices to perform a script to do some sort of a task over and over? Well, this is where we're going. So in 2017, there was a university that shall be unnamed, and they were involved with Verizon was running their network, I believe. And Verizon did the investigation when this occurred. They found that at certain times, the network in the university would bog down to a crawl. Nobody could get anything to happen, and they couldn't figure out why. Well, an investigation of the firewall system in the university showed that in excess of 5,000 users or devices were going to the network every 15 minutes and requesting information about seafood. And what were these devices, these mysterious users? Some hacker at the university had written a script that got into the vending machines and the refrigeration systems and the lighting systems. They have those wonderful lights you can control, the color, the intensity. And they reprogrammed every single one of them with a script that every 15 minutes would do a web search, a domain name search, a DNS search for seafood. And as you can imagine, as the traffic grew from these conscripted zombie devices, that everything slowed to a crawl. Well, it was a prank, but the prank actually made the devices on the network of the university attack the network of the university. Now, there's a term for this, and it's called denial of service. And DDoS attacks, or direct denial of service attacks, are a means that hackers use to disrupt the operation of a website or a business. So you can imagine some hackers getting together and going, we don't like this particular business, and writing a malicious script or a piece of malware that attacks whatever's on their network or sends continual nonsense requests to the network and bogs it down under traffic. And this is how they deny service. They make the network so busy that it can't undertake its normal tasks, and you cannot access the site, you cannot use the services. So a denial of service attack is essentially converting some device somewhere, in this case it was the network devices themselves, to jam the network up so that nobody can use it. Now, this isn't all. When you stop and think about it, if you've got a lighting system in your home or a security camera or a smart refrigerator, just about anybody can get into that thing. They can hack into it, and there are a lot of exploits for doing that. And they can watch your home They can listen on the microphones. They can turn your lights on and off. They can actually stop some of your appliances from running or make them run in ways they didn't. Somebody hacks into your oven and turns it on 500 degrees and leaves it on all day. They turn all your lights on. And what happens to your electric bill? Things like this are those sort of monkey guerrilla warfare things that people do sometimes, but sometimes there's a serious result from it. Now, in 2019, there was a fellow who was a high school dropout, actually, and his name was Kenneth Shookman, and I think I'm pronouncing it properly. It's an unusual spelling. And he got involved with some guys on Skype talking back and forth about hacking, and he got into this denial of service idea. And he actually took some existing software that was known to take control of IoT devices, and he made a major change to it. And the change is this: this fellow is particularly intelligent. He has the persistence to reverse engineer the software inside IoT devices and find, shall we call it, flaws in the software. In particular, the Chinese router I mentioned, the Huawei router, HUAWEI, was the vulnerable thing, and they're very popular. So he took an existing piece of software that would perform denial of service, and he plugged in his own routine for hacking these routers. And he actually was able to infect, he thought, around 100,000 or so. When the government caught him and charged him, they said that he had infected upwards of 500,000 systems. And it was kind of a game at the time, but what he was doing is pointing out that there were an awful lot of flaws in the Internet of Things hardware. Now, that somebody can sit at home, tinkering away, a high school dropout, and hack into this horribly simplistic and uncontrollable and unregulated system that everybody counts on who has the smart homes, and turn it into an absolute disaster. That's something else. Imagine somebody hacking into your router and perverting your system. And I mean, he was able to take over, like I said, they counted 500,000 plus infections of his software. So, people like that should become consultants. They can let us know what's wrong with these things. And I know a number of people have done that in the past. But just imagine when you go to automate your home, you're putting yourself in a position where you lose control. It's kind of like giving the keys to your house to some group of people you don't know. And so I strongly recommend against getting into Internet of Things specifically for these reasons. The hacking capabilities of people are just amazing. And when you leave your cameras, microphones, sensors, light bulbs, and appliances all open, and routers all open to somebody else's work, they can literally turn every piece of that hardware against you. And as I'll reiterate, it's estimated that there are over 50 billion Internet of Thing connections right now to devices of that sort all over the world. And it's only going to grow. Now, I will say, if you have a small private home network with a firewall on it, then you probably won't have any issues. Because then you can isolate all of your control systems. And obviously, think about it. If you have a home control system, it should be isolated from everything else and have an extremely restrictive method of accessing it. And that's just good common sense. I think a lot of people are not really aware of how the world around them works these days, and that's one of the issues we face. So we have to find a way to get people more aware of not only the flash and the ability to control things, but of the flaws and the methods of controlling them and giving yourself a measure of security. At this point, routers are one of the main methods that hackers use to get into businesses because then they can subvert the traffic. Years ago, there was a ploy that people put into routers that instead of sending the router's search results to the address that you expected, they would send it to a fake website that looked just like it. and then would route it on to the original destination. And they could monitor every piece of traffic that went through your home or your business with no problems whatsoever. So just imagine if you could insert yourself into the stream between somebody's debit card and their transactions, and you could monitor everything. What would you learn? What would you know about them? And what could you interfere with? Well, this is exactly what's being done with IoT. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the fact that we have the ability to control our homes and to make them smarter. The problem we run into, however, as I mentioned, is that when you have a system such as this that is full of issues, such as security issues and exploit issues, you cannot afford to put this sort of stuff out in the open because you've left yourself open to attack. So how do you solve that? Well, right now, people are aware that there are a couple of interesting issues with the internet. When you look up the net address of a device, and it can be your computer or an IoT device, you will find that there are 4 specific numbers used to specify the address. Now, these are 8-bit numbers. They can be 0 to 255 for each of these 4 codes, these access numbers. And this is the Internet 4 format. If we went to Internet 6 format, we would gain a huge number of addresses that we could use. And it would also mean that we wouldn't run up against the wall we're up against right now. Many places are using Internet 6 protocol right now, but they also have the 4 as a way to be compatible. The problem when you do something like this is the original Internet, which I believe was invented by a fellow by the name of Tim Berners-Lee. The original invention of it was intended for use in communication between computers and research labs. And it turned out, at the day, the thought was if you hooked a bunch of computers together, they would just kind of lock up at random. They wouldn't know what they were doing. But actually, it's very simple to figure out a packet system where everybody has a driver in the computer that understands how to send and receive these packets of data. And this was the basis of how it all got started. And originally it was simple messages, later it was whole files, and then we ended up with HTML, hypertext. And hypertext, if anybody uses like Microsoft Word, you know that there's a key you can hit that says reveal codes. And you will see that what you have typed, the text that you see, is only a small fraction of what's in the document. Behind it are formatting codes that tell you things like the font, the size of the font, the style, such as bold or italic, the color of the text. Well, this is a markup language, and it's written in such a way that it is invisible to you. You simply tell it what you want to do, and the markup is done behind the scenes. Well, HTML, the language behind web pages, is a markup language. The idea was if you had a text that you were showing someone and there were some words or terms somewhere in the document that maybe you didn't understand, it sure would be nice if you could go to that word and it would highlight and you could click it and a little definition box would pop up. And this was the beginning of what hypertext was. So it was written as a markup language, and it became much more than that. Now there are actually elements of graphics rendering for 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional worlds. And our site, the Universe Science Center, actually uses HTML5 and some JavaScript, special JavaScript code to create those 3-dimensional worlds. Well, this is the same thing. When you get into Internet of Things, you find that there is a whole level of language that you don't see behind all the commands. And hackers are very adept at finding the loopholes in this. Even if we rewrite it to be more secure, it'll only be more secure. There won't ever be total security. So when you have remote control devices, always be aware that there are vulnerabilities, and they are normally invisible to the average person. And you can't just go out and say, hey, I need a hacker to help me solve a problem here. That's probably not the best way to do it. One of the things that's coming around the pike here is the quantum computing. And people ask why it's so important. No matter what your password is, no matter what your encryption is, quantum computing can probably crack it in a matter of seconds. We're rapidly approaching a point where it will be next to impossible to have security for anything. So I don't know what that's going to do. It's going to be like a bomb going off all over the whole net. When no passwords are secure, when anybody can get a utility from a hacker or a website that allows them to crack any password, um, it really makes an issue that none of us are ready to face. Every credit transaction, every cash transaction, everything would be compromised. So the Internet of Things has its flaws, but maybe its flaws will serve as a wake up call so that we'll come up with new and better methods of encrypting. One of the best systems I ever saw, which was it literally is just about as unbreakable as you're going to get. Let's say two people have an agreed upon block password. It's like 1,000 characters, and that's your special password. And the two of you share it. And then you have it in your machine, they have it in their machine. Now, here's the trick. You never yield the password. Instead, your machine calls their machine and says, you know, if I took the 35th character and the 9th character and the 12th character, and I added them all together with a special routine, what would the answer be? And the other machine has to give you the correct answer. And then it asks you a question. Well, if I took the 9th character, the 18th character, and the 44th, and I exclusive OR'd them together, what would the answer be? And then you answer properly. Now, the beauty of this is if you can get through 6 to 10 such question and answer phases back and forth, nobody has yielded a single bit of their information, but they have reached an agreement based on the fact that each of them is reaching the same answers. If you've got 10 such exchanges and everybody's right, you're virtually certain that they're the right communication partner, that they have the proper encryption. And since nobody ever yields your password one way or the other, nobody can hack it. So this authentication system is actually one of the stronger and simpler systems that exists. The only downside is that you must personally meet to exchange the first set of passwords. So yeah, that's a problem. On the other hand, it's extremely secure. Internet of Things could have each and every device with an individual password supplied with it, and only the buyer of the device receiving that password. Then you would have an opportunity to have extremely secure information exchange and control exchange with all of your devices. So if anybody has any questions about Internet of Things, the devices or whatever, we're certainly open to that now. Just speak up at any time and we'll do the best we can to answer that. And while I'm waiting for a question to show up, I'm going to reiterate, go to our site, go to schultzlaboratories.com or go to universesciencecenter.com and become a member. Sign up for our classes, sign up for a membership, help us expand our galleries and our content. And also, we're always open to, suggestions. Tell us what you would like to see in a gallery. If you have a specific course you're teaching or a specific course you're learning, or if you're doing a homeschooling event, homeschoolers often have to have pretty solid material to work from. Tell us what you need, and we'll help you get a gallery together for it and make a live presentation. A whole 3D world your students can walk around in and interact with. And also join us Mondays, once again, for our classes. Meta World is our upcoming class starting on the 31st, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let's have some questions if anybody's got them. And by the way, do look up Internet of Things and look at some of the lighting systems. That's a good place to start. Lighting control is one of the simplest applications, and it's one that many people like. I have my own older daughter recently had her gaming room, I would call it, outfitted with some wonderful digital lighting system, and it looks really sharp. I do have some controllable lamps in the studio here that I use for illumination. But honestly, I always leave them on white, so I have the capability of changing it, but I just haven't really had an opportunity to need that at this point. But the capability is there. The only difference is I'm going to make sure that the network I'm using is not a public network. That way I can't be in the middle of a show and somebody turn all the lights red or something. And that could be irritating if you were running a factory and somebody could hack into your network. They could shut your machines down. I know now, this is another interesting point. Internet of Things is not a new idea. I've worked in a number of industrial environments where you use PLCs, programmable logic controllers. And these are the brains, the automation behind, for instance, I was with Universal Studios for a while, working in rides like Back to the Future or Hanna-Barbera, where you have motion bases and people get in and they ride these things. And they control the movement of the systems, the sound system, the video. All of those things are controlled by these programmable logic controllers, but if you could get into the network, you could cause some real chaos. I worked at a fiberglass factory for a while, and everything but everything, we had, I think, about 120 different devices that were net interconnected, and they were all PLCs. Uh, it got to be so busy, I actually wrote a utility that would scan the addresses of each of the functional devices on a regular basis and get a status word back from it so we could check in and see that they were operating properly. And if something went wrong, I could get a notification in the office that said, hey, the thing is got a problem. And so that gave me a little bit of a heads up and allowed me to get in there and do some service before it became serious. So, there's nothing wrong with a distributed remote control system or automation system. But the issues, as outlined here, are the security that is sorely lacking at this point. Um, Again, open for questions, and we'll not be doing the randomizer for Saturday and Sunday. We will return 6 p.m. Monday, and a new term will pop up then. And we're going to try and make this a little more interesting too. And by the way, I want to thank all of the people who made this possible and who support this effort. Um, we're hoping to bring you more interesting content as time goes on. I think Internet of Things is a pretty good choice. Some people tuned in for the quasi-periodic uh, demonstration yesterday to talk about that, and that was pretty interesting. And we found interesting examples in floor tiles and the weather system and other things, and in metal crystals. When you look at IoT, it's really pretty self-explanatory. This isn't a really highly technical term, but just be aware that most of the devices you buy these days give you the option. If you buy a refrigerator or a stove, it will often have a display on the door or the panel somewhere now, and it'll allow you to preset the time, like I was saying, for a roast to bake or something like that. Um, be aware that you have the option of keeping that in the house and not going online. And look at the instructions and see what's necessary to do that. On the other hand, if you put an app on your phone, you've pretty much opened the thing up to the world. So be aware of that. Um, and we'll choose a new term tomorrow, and I hope that everybody will join us again. We often do a Facebook Live spot early in the morning so people know what's coming. And, again, become a member. And we're building a new library, by the way, in our virtual world, which will have a listing of all of our podcasts, published papers, books that we have for sale. We're going to also do some other specialty merchandise pretty soon, but the library is going to have our lessons, our tutorials, and I'm soon starting a series on robotics. I know a lot of people want to build robots or at least understand how to build the robots, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll get down and dirty with relay controllers and Arduino cards, soldering technique. Go to our YouTube channel or the Schultz Laboratories website and have a look at our tutorials for the solder workbench. We show what tools you'll need. We're going to be doing some more material just like that. And send us an email at admin@schultzlaboratories.com if you have any questions. And tell us what you'd like to see, and we'll see what we can do to make that happen. Meanwhile, the weekend is here. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Thank you again for all our supporters and for the people who make the show possible. Internet of Things, interesting concept, and I think we've pretty much hit all the high spots. It's been hacked a number of times. Universities have gone down. Networks have been infected. And I sure don't want that to happen to my front doorbell camera. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you for watching the show. And we'll see you again real soon. Make the world a better place. That's all I can recommend. Thank you.